Hi Jess, you made a great video yesterday. I can tell you put a lot of thought into that, and it really got me thinking too. I know I'm not a middle school teacher or a high school teacher, but Erin is one and you are one. So I actually have a lot of conversations about education and educational theory, and so it just really got me thinking about some different things. And of course, Erin and I had a really good discussion about it. And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot since watching your video is the way that sometimes a student or even an adult in the workplace might sometimes not quite have grasped what we think is a basic skill, like maybe being on time or listening well and retaining information. And when we see that, I think usually the rest of us who have grasped that skill, our response is, well, they're going to have to learn that sooner or later. And the underlying but not spoken other half of that sentence is, or else they're not going to do well in life. And I don't think that's ever meant to be intentionally cruel. I know I have that thought sometimes. It's just something that happens when I have a skill that someone else maybe doesn't have. And if I think that it's easy, then I feel like the other person should have that skill, but maybe it's not so easy. And maybe the correct response should be, how can I help this person do better at their job or at school? How can I help them learn, as opposed to just having them figure it out eventually? Another good skill to learn, I think, could be how to disagree in a healthy way. I think what this world and what our country really needs is not people who can argue the best, but maybe people who can listen really well and imagine others complexly. Because I think you get so much more done by being a good listener than by being a good debater. Which actually brings me to something else I wanted to talk to you about, because the people who are good listeners are usually, not always, but usually introverts. And I just read a really terrific book about introverts, and it's called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. It's by Susan Cain, and it is really, really wonderful. I've been looking at it and meaning to read it for years, and I finally picked it up, and I'm so glad I did. And it's really heavy on the sociology and studies and theories, and that's not something that I would have thought would be more exciting, but I was really, really excited to pick it up every time and learn more from her about introverts. And there's a lot of different things that she talks about, a lot of different traits that are kind of connected to the introvert-extrovert spectrum. But really, I think the main drive, the main point of this book is that introverts and extroverts are not always valued the same. Especially in Western culture, we tend to lift up the extroverts and say, wow, they're so great, and we tell the introverts, well, you need to speak up more. And that's just not helpful. It's just not effective. I especially like the fact that she really pushes the message that not only are introverts just fine the way they are, but they have really valuable traits, and they can bring things to the table that extroverts can't. And so we definitely should not ignore introverts, because they can bring a lot of value to our world. I really like how she talks about historical figures like Rosa Parks and Eleanor Roosevelt, people who had this quiet strength about them that was really, really effective and helped them do some really great things. So if you're a teacher or an employer, or you just have introverts in your life that you want to get to know better, I definitely recommend this book. One more interesting thing about this is that there's these little quizzes in the book periodically, just to kind of help you gauge where you're at, and if you're an introvert or an extrovert, and it's just yes or no questions. And the trouble was that as I read this book, I didn't become more sure about which one I was. I became more confused because there's some things that I really resonated with about the introvert spectrum, but in other things I didn't really. And I definitely went into it sort of identifying as an extrovert because I really like to spend time with people a lot more than I like to be alone. So who knows? She did say that there is such thing as an ambivert, so maybe that's me? Anyway, Jess, I've had a really great first week of Feber Frenzy, and I love you so, so much, and I can't wait to see you again on Monday.